I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News Tonight. Braverman is on the brink. The straight-talking Home Secretary has gone rogue, accusing the police of playing favourites with protesters. But is she right? With our country surrendering to religious extremism, Suella Braverman gets my backing in the Big Opinion shortly. Then my panel come to blows. Riled and ready for a night of fierce debate, we have Suzanne Evans, John Sargent and Amy Nicole Turner. Plus, does Rishi Sunak really need to sack his Home Secretary? Patrick O'Flynn battles Imran Aitan in the clash. And should the police be doing more to protect poppy sellers and stand up for the British way of life? Former editor of The Sun newspaper, Kelvin Mackenzie, is disgusted by the shocking treatment of our army veterans, and he speaks out shortly. Elsewhere, with the country at breaking point, is King Charles right that we should be more welcoming to refugees? I'll ask former Home Office Minister Anne Widdecombe whether our monarch should keep his nose out of politics. And what about this, folks? In a bombshell Sun exclusive, GB News' very own Nigel Farage is reportedly heading down under into I'm a Celebrity. If true, it's one of the biggest showbiz stories of the year. So I've rounded up two I'm a Celeb legends for their unmissable reactions. Former King of the Jungle, Christopher Biggins, and political firebrand, Edwina Currie. As always, we'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, and Lady Colin Campbell tells us about the Sussexes declaring war on the American cartoon series Family Guy. This is GB News Tonight. My big opinion on Britain's shameful surrender to religious extremism coming up. I'm not pulling my punches, and yes, I'm dropping through truth bombs, OK? Because I've got some things that you need to know. We're going to talk about it. Lots to get through. First, the news headlines, and an old friend of mine, Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing calls to sack Suella Braverman after she defied Downing Street with her Met criticism comments. In an article in The Times today, the Home Secretary accuses the Metropolitan Police of playing favourites with pro-Palestinian protesters. Labour's National Campaign Coordinator, Pat McFadden, says that she breached the code for failing to clear the editorial with Number 10. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's astonished by the article.
I think her behaviour over the last few weeks has been behaviour that is irresponsible. Her article in The Times was incorrect and inflammatory. At a time when senior politicians should be bringing communities together, uniting people who have differences, instead she is stoking divisions. And I worry, as a consequence of her words and her behaviour, you'll see this Saturday on Armistice Day, the far right, EDL and other people turning up on Saturday causing problems.
Meanwhile, Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer says people shouldn't feel discouraged from joining in this weekend's remembrance events in London.
They're not going to be anywhere near the Cenotaph, and the Metropolitan Police are bending over backwards to make sure that everybody who comes up into London, whether you're selling poppies, whether you're attending a reunion or you're going to remembrance, is completely unmolested and allowed to get on with what is a really special and important weekend this weekend. We spent all week making sure that can happen, and I really encourage people to come into London and remember in the way we always do this weekend.
Israel has agreed to a series of pauses in fighting in northern Gaza. The White House says there'll be daily 4-hour pauses starting from today. It comes after discussions between US and Israeli officials in recent days, including talks US President Joe Biden had with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The US says it will allow people to get out of harm's way and for deliveries of humanitarian aid. Joseph Puska has been found guilty of murdering a schoolteacher in County Offaly. 23-year-old Aisling Murphy was killed while exercising on a canal path in Tullamore in January last year. Judge Mr. Justice Tony Hunt told the jury, "We have evil in this room." Aisling's boyfriend Ryan Casey spoke outside court after the verdict. The Queen has commemorated the nation's war dead at a ceremony at Westminster Abbey's Field of Remembrance. Camilla paid tribute and recognised the sacrifices of those who fought and died for their country in her first visit to the Abbey since the coronation. After placing the cross down, Camilla and hundreds of veterans fell silent as the chimes of Big Ben rang out. This is GB News on TV, online, on DAB Plus radio and on your smart speaker. Now it's back to Mark.
Good evening. It's been 4 weeks since those wonderful, peaceful marches, full of lovely, caring, sharing people calling for a holy war began. And today, poppy sellers, a fixture at train stations and outside supermarkets at this time of year, are nowhere to be seen. People raising money for injured servicemen and women, terrified that they will be abused or attacked on the streets of this country. Do you see the problem? Of course, not everyone on the marches is preaching hate. Like most decent people, they're worried about innocent lives in Gaza. But they are marching alongside people who are. Has it not occurred to woke progressives, the Be Kind crowd, who are much better human beings than you and me, that if they march alongside vocal terrorist sympathisers, they are how can I put it, terrorist sympathisers. Would you go on a march in which a good number of people were, God forbid, calling for the genocide of anyone of African heritage, for example? Of course not. Lock them up and throw away the key. But you will walk alongside those calling for the eradication of Israel? That's an interesting take. Another interesting take is the hilarious Queers for Palestine Brigade, a bunch of woke lefties who don't realise that if Hamas got hold of them, they'd be eliminated faster than you can say vegan sausage roll. History is repeating itself, and calls for a second Holocaust on the Jewish people are being platformed in modern Britain. Why? Well, because in the name of political correctness and for fear of being called racist, the spineless authorities have turned a blind eye to this toxic, hateful ideology. That's what Suella Braverman was rightly calling out when she wrote in The Times this week that the police are, quote, playing favourites with protesters. And Labour have condemned the straight-talking Home Secretary, saying that she's inflaming tensions. No, she isn't. I think you'll find thugs on the cenotaph calling for suicide bombings and mass murder are the ones inflaming tensions. Just look at this gathering of wonderfully peaceful people this afternoon outside London's King's College. Doesn't sound very be kind to me, chanting, "We will honour all our martyrs there." And I'll take no lectures on this issue from Sir Keir Starmer, who astonishingly and mysteriously forgot to wear a poppy whilst addressing British Muslims last week. An accident, according to Labour HQ. How convenient. And London Mayor Sadiq Khan claims it's Braverman who is stirring the pot. How ironic, given it's something in which he specialises. Here's what he had to say today.
Far right are now organising on Armistice Day. They do encourage violence. They are anti-Islamic. We've seen a massive increase in anti-Semitism, but also an increase in Islamophobia. The job of the politicians like the Home Sec, myself and the Prime Minister is to support the police in doing their jobs, but also to, address people's fears rather than play on them. And I'm afraid the Home Secretary is playing on the fears of the Jewish community rather than addressing them.
Yeah, branding all counter-protesters far right, people who simply want Armistice Day to remain sacred, anti-Islamic. It doesn't sound like the rhetoric of bringing communities together. The vast majority of Muslims in this country are peace-loving and make a huge contribution to our society. But over the last 4 weekends, we've seen unacceptable religious extremism from a vocal and influential minority over which the police and the wider authorities appear to have lost control. We've allowed this problem to fester and bubble up for years now. But these marches, whilst an affront to British values, are useful too, because they've shone a light on the extent of this problem in this country. Religious extremism is on our shores, and it's extremely worrying. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. Let's get the thoughts now of my brilliant panel. Political commentator Suzanne Evans, former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Let me start with you, Suzanne. Your reaction to what you've seen in the last few weeks?
I've been absolutely appalled. I think Suella Braverman's right. These are hate marches. I've been appalled too at the lack of action that the police have been taking. I can't imagine that I'm living in a society where Jews are now afraid to go on public transport, where they're afraid to be wearing the Stars of David in public, where they feel that, well, there has been an increase in anti-Semitic attacks. It's not a feeling. This is a fact. This is what's happening. You said in your monologue, Mark, that history is repeating itself, and that is my worry. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it. The authorities are not doing about it. Parliament, Suella Braverman is saying something must be done about it. Instead of saying, yes, of course we must stand with our Jewish citizens, people are saying, oh, sack her. She's evil. Get rid of her. I find it quite beyond belief. I think we've given in to religious extremism, and as you say, it has been coming for quite a while. Ostensibly, in this country, we abolished blasphemy laws in 2008 in England and Wales, and then more recently in Scotland. But they seem to me to have been replaced by another form of blasphemy law that's come in the form of the Equality Act and public order acts, which seem to suggest that there's something called religiously motivated hate, alarm, and distress. And what is the difference if you feel because of your religion you're being persecuted and you can take the law to get redress for that? What really is the difference between that and a blasphemy law, apart from semantics?
Now, John, these protests are provably linked to Hamas now. And given that the scenes we've seen even today there at King's College in London, the line that people are marching in peace is wearing a bit thin, isn't it?
Well, no, I mean, what you've got to allow for is the fact, it may seem strange, maybe it's strange to young people, but someone of my age, we're used to demonstrations, particularly, oddly enough, when we don't have much power in the region. People are very frustrated, they're very upset by what they see, they're responding to that. So it's not a matter of, oh, this is a new development. What's happened that's new is what's happened in the Middle East and people's reaction to it. People were horrified by the terrorist attack in Israel, and people have been extremely horrified with these endless pictures of children suffering in Gaza. Now, what you can't do is say to people, right, we mustn't have any demonstrations. What's the point of a demonstration? The point is, as far as the authorities are concerned, and the British tradition, is for people to let off steam. They're not, in that sense, there are some people on it who may be people who are taking part in a hate march. Most of the people are expressing their indignation and their horror.
Would you march with people who are calling for the extermination of Israel?
No, I personally wouldn't. I used to march when I was a student. I was part of the famous demonstration against US policy in Grosvenor Square. Now, what happened was it turned violent. People like me went home. Were we right about American policy in Vietnam? We turned out to be right. Now, that was a classic demonstration. The British government couldn't control what the Americans were doing in Vietnam, but the Americans were in the wrong and we demonstrated.
Amy, like I've said, these protests are linked to Hamas, and we've had calls for an intifada, which means suicide bombs on trains and in restaurants, and a holy war against Israel from London to the Middle East.
You know as well as I do that all protests have extreme factions. Minimal. It's organised by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, which has made a point of saying they're not politically aligned to anyone.
And these protests are also linked to key Hamas figures, including a former terror chief who now lives in a council house in London.
I want to draw attention to the video you showed.
Ignore these key facts?
I've just said that there is extreme elements within the march. There are hundreds of thousands of people, but I want to draw attention to...
make your point.
You say you want to talk about key facts. The clip you showed where they are talking about martyrs, did you know in Palestine, in occupied regions like the West Bank, like in Gaza, that children play a game called Pass the Martyr? Because they are so used to seeing children around them dying that they have formed a game we haven't seen the likes of since we did Ring a Ring of Roses around the time of the plague.
Because they are run by the murderous group Hamas.
You've tried to present that video. You've tried to present that video as something that it isn't. And I think that this, along with Suella Braverman's comments all this week, have thrown petrol over what would have probably been a very peaceful protest.
Which was, I'm sorry, we've seen the marches. I've been caught up in the marches. You hear people chanting. I've spoken to protesters on that march who absolutely denied that Hamas had murdered anybody on October the 7th. They deny it. These are not peaceful people. These are not people who actually are just standing up for Palestine. They are supporting the intifada against Israel. There's no doubt about that.
There are lots of different
sorts. They want the end to it.
There are lots of different sorts of people on these marches.
Yeah,
that's
but
all.
There are hundreds of thousands of people.
Briefly, let me ask John, do you condemn Hamas?
Of course I condemn.
Well, then, what do you think about people going on marches which are provably linked to Hamas?
I assume that many of them, if I was on the march, I wouldn't go on the march. I've given up marching. But no, the point about this is you've got to allow for people who are sympathetic to Palestinians.
Hundreds of thousands of people.
You're allowed to let off steam. Why did the Metropolitan Police not allow people to let off steam about the anti-lockdown protests?
They did.
No, they did not. I shall never forget that scene when Charles
Walker MP was remonstrating with the police when they were bundling an elderly woman into the back of a van because she was protesting
Weren't they at
against
the time
lockdown.
breaking the law?
The Sarah Everard protest on Clapham Common, again, completely cracked down on. Black Lives Matter, different matter. Palestinian protest, different
Black Lives Matter. A police force charged through the...
Exactly. Suella is right. There is a dual level of police.
But are you saying there should be no demonstrations?
No,
I'm
saying there should be no
who is
demonstrations.
upset and frustrated?
Very good for the home of free speech.
You haven't. Are you saying that's what they should be doing? They should ban these demonstrations.
Well, these are demonstrations happening around the world.
All the demonstrations should be held accountable for the fact that they
Hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, most of these demonstrators have been peaceful. We've had 3 demonstrations.
Peaceful and organised by Hamas.
No, but we're involving tens
None of you.
What about the hang on a minute. What about because there
Hamas
isn't
are tied up with
Hamas
other matters in Gaza. They're not spending their time
That's not
working
true.
their way
That's
through
not
a London.
true. It was revealed in the Daily Telegraph that a former terror chief was involved in the organisation of this Hamas march.
The idea that Hamas are sitting around in their bombed-out headquarters in Gaza saying, yeah, but I just wonder whether we should go to Whitehall or whether we should go across the river and then go outside the US Embassy.
Hamas is a prescribed organisation, a terror organisation in this country, and just days after they massacred more Jews than at any time before the Holocaust. Hundreds of thousands, but we can't. We're out protesting.
What should they do? Should they then say? Should they arrest all these people?
Yeah,
all right,
absolutely.
okay. No, let's get
you should arrest.
But there are too many.
You'll be arresting.
Okay, let me make a point. There are too many to arrest because Britain is in the grip of extreme religious ideology.
And 76% of the population support a ceasefire, which is what these marches are for. So you're going to lock up 76% of the British population.
No one should be allowed to demonstrate.
I didn't say that, but anyone shouting for jihad, anyone shouting anti-Semitic troops.
And we all agree they should be locked up, but not...
I think you will agree that the temperature has risen in the room, but that's what this show is all about. It's the home of diverse opinion. What's yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Now, coming up, rumour has it that our very own Nigel Farage could be heading into the I'm a Celeb jungle. But as The Sun reports, he'll be camping with the likes of boxer Tony Bellew and Remainer lefty Freddie Sirieix. Would he have what it takes to be king of the jungle? Former campmates Edwina Currie and Christopher Biggins cast their expert verdicts shortly. But first, as Suella Braverman goes rogue again and calls the police biased in favour of left-wing protesters, should Rishi Sunak bow to calls to sack his Home Secretary? Journalist and former MEP Patrick O'Clynn takes on anti-racism activist Iman Aitan. That's next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Is Nigel Farage heading into the jungle? I'll be asking Christopher Biggins and Edwina Currie shortly. Also, Anne Widdecombe coming up on the King, saying that we need to be more welcoming to refugees. But time for the clash. And not for the first time, Suella Braverman has gone rogue, launching an almighty attack on the police in an article for The Times, which Downing Street did not fully sign off. The Home Secretary questioned why, and I quote, right-wing and nationalist protesters who engage in aggression are rightly met with a stern response, yet pro-Palestinian mobs displaying almost identical behaviour are largely ignored, even when clearly breaking the law. You could say then that the Home Secretary has thrown a metaphorical two fingers up to her boss, the Prime Minister. So does Suella need to be sacked? Let me know your thoughts. Mark at gbnews.com or tweet us at gbnews and do vote in the online poll. But to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome the columnist and political commentator Patrick O'Flynn, who's written a great article about this in The Spectator today, and the anti-racism activist Iman Ayton. Iman, it's our first time. Great to have you on the show. First of many, I've got no doubt. Do you think Suella needs to go?
Yes. Oh, my gosh. Yes, of course. She is an extremist. So the very thing that she complains about is the very thing that she does on a daily basis. Let's just include the fact that she spoke about multiculturalism being a failure. Let's just add one clear point here, OK? Her parents are Kenyan and Mauritius. Her husband is a Jew and her boss is an Asian man, and she is the Home Secretary of a country that is majority white. So in terms of multiculturalism, that is a perfect example of the success of multiculturalism in this country, notwithstanding the fact that, of course, during the fact that she is a success, she's decided to spend her time fueling the culture wars, left, right and centre, divide and more divide, and so, as opposed to calming the situation, diffusing the situation and bringing us all together as a nation. And this is why this woman needs to go. In fact, I should actually say, by right, she should be leading with a mug or a T-shirt that says, I am East African and proud, and instead she says, no, let's just make things more worse and divisive. So that's an issue. She needs to go. She needs to go.
Then that's very clear. Before I get to Patrick, you said about how she's inflaming tensions.
Yes.
Are the people on the streets of London calling for a holy war not inflaming tensions?
No, because we can't generalise. Can't generalise, OK?
Well, are those people inflaming tensions? The people calling for an intifada, which means suicide bombs on buses, are they inflaming tensions?
Oh, yes, a certain cohort, yes.
Well, she's condemning those people.
Yeah, and a certain cohort. We cannot generalise here. We cannot tar the same people with the same brush, right? That would be a generalisation. Therefore, prejudice, which
But when
means...
these things are being shouted out, why don't the marches disperse? Why do they get stronger every weekend?
Because we're talking about a cohort, a specific cohort within those marches that are extremists.
Okay.
And we cannot ignore the
Fair
fact
enough.
that every community, every culture has an extremist cohort. That is a fact.
OK, Patrick,
of life.
Patrick, has she got to go?
Absolutely not. I must say that, Iman, you said probably made about 25 points.
I have, indeed.
I'm glad you've been listening. I disagree with all 25 of them.
All right.
I particularly disagree. Let's take them roughly from the beginning.
Go ahead.
You say that Suella should be seen as an example of why multiculturalism is a success,
And extremism.
Right?
And extremism, Patrick.
It's ridiculous to
Extremism.
think she's an extremist. If you look at the polling, she's square in the middle of British public opinion.
No, she's not.
Right?
She doesn't
But
represent
anyway,
the general consensus of the
if I
public.
could just ask, if I could just answer.
You spoke very well.
Yeah,
Do let Patrick
the
speak.
multiculturalism point. Suella Braverman has bought into majority British culture, right? Her point about multiculturalism failing, I think, was amply demonstrated the day after the October 7th Hamas pogrom. There were people in Acton, people on the Edgware Road in London, dressed in Middle East garb and robes, waving Palestinian flags, celebrating. At that stage, not a single bomb had been dropped on Gaza. They were celebrating a pogrom. They were entirely motivated by their own obsession with homeland, co-religion, country of origin conflicts. They hadn't integrated Britain at all. I thought that was an absolute home run for Suella on her point that multiculturalism has failed in certain, not across the board, but that the integration challenge hasn't been met. And I also think her article today is perfectly reasonable, very moderately put, and I think it's undeniable. I think it's undeniable that the police...
Moderately put,
yes,
really? Moderately put, that was your sentence. Moderately put.
OK, well, I'll break off and try to have my turn and say, tell me a single phrase that you thought was explosive or irresponsible.
Multiculturalism has failed.
That's not what she said in the Times. That's from weeks ago. But
that was the most recent.
I'm saying her article
OK,
was
Patrick, I'll come back to you in a moment. Iman?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was the most recent article in terms of what she said.
What
in
was
terms
immoderate in that article?
So fair enough. So what you're talking about is something that she spoke about recently, as opposed to all the things that she said over the time that she's been a Home Secretary for the last year. So let's just talk about the real thing that made a real headline. Multiculturalism has failed. Let's just be clear. This woman...
Something said by Angela Merkel 10 years ago.
OK, no problem. Right, you're accurate. So let's just talk about the fact that Suella Braverman said this, OK? This is a woman who is... her parents were Kenyan her parents are Kenyan and Mauritius. Her husband is a Jew. Her boss is an Asian man. I've already said this, because this is the point.
I tell you what...
You cannot talk about multiculturalism has failed when you are East African ruling this country. That's a fact.
OK, Patrick, OK, Iman, I'll come back to you. Iman?
You have now very heavily implied that Suella Braverman's own ethnicity should shut down her intellectual freedom to think about what is best for the country that she's grown up in, that is her country. You're implying that there's an inherited duty of someone from an ethnic minority background to take a certain set of attitudes on things like multiculturalism, on things like immigration. Now, if that's true, nobody from an ethnic minority background could ever be Home Secretary because they couldn't have their own intellectual independence. And I think that is the most divisive attitude possible, and we should be a society where everyone, no matter what their skin colour, what their ethnic background, is entitled to say what they think is the best for their society.
And Iman, I'm going to give you the last word. Now, Patrick, that was great. Iman, the clock's against us, right? And I'll let you have your say. I just want to put one point to you on the multicultural issue, which is, if multiculturalism is working, why are 300,000 British Jews afraid to leave the house?
This is what happens with Black people. Black people are afraid to work in certain areas. Black people are afraid to go into certain areas.
Are there people on the streets of Britain calling for the death of Black people?
Well, there were as a result of the Black Lives Matter protests. That is a fact.
Okay.
So this is the point.
Okay, final thought.
Thank you. There are extremist cohorts within every community. That needs to be taken into consideration. That is a fact of life. In terms of people being extremists, well, she has been extremist in terms of the fact that we need to take into consideration that she is East African, and the fact that she's talking about people not being able to express. No, yeah, she's British, but she's also East African. So therefore, it is heritage, exactly. Yes. So therefore, she is being hypocritical. She's being hypocritical and generalising when she talks about protests and she talks about everyone being tarred with the same brush. That is hypocritical, and that is
fascinating
generalisation.
I just finished by saying Rishi Sunak, also another point, has no mandate. Right, he wasn't elected by the British people. The British people more agree with Suella Braverman than they do with him. So I would say he needs to wind his neck in. That's not the general consensus.
That is not. You've seen the Palestinian protests. That is actually inaccurate.
I think we can all agree.
That's not the general consensus of Britain. That is a fact.
An hour. Let me tell you, Iman was your first time.
Sorry.
It will be the first of many.
Thank you.
My thanks to my old friend Patrick O'Flynn and anti-racism activist Iman Aiton. A great debate. It's what this show's all about. It's what this place is all about. What do you think? Mark at gbnews.com. Do check out Patrick O'Flynn's brilliant article in The Spectator. It's out today. OK, folks, well, who do you agree with as Suella Braverman goes rogue, calling the police biased? Should she be fired as Home Secretary? Gillian says everything Suella said is absolutely right. Sunak should be wary of sacking her. It's in his interests to have her on the inside of the tent rather than the outside. Den says you can't get sacked for telling the truth. Barry says Suella Braverman is just spouting hate to appeal to the hard right as she postures for her leadership bid. Well, your verdict is in. 17% of people say that... There's a surprise. 17% of you say Sunak should sack Braverman. 83% say she should stay. Coming up with the country at breaking point, is King Charles right that we should be more welcoming to refugees? I'll ask former Home Office Minister Anne Widdecombe whether our monarch should keep his nose out of politics. But first, rumour has it that our very own Nigel Farage is heading into the I'm a Celebrity jungle. It's a Sun exclusive. They're saying he's headed down under, but does Britain's Brexit hero stand a chance of becoming king of the jungle? I'll be asking former campmates Christopher Biggins and Edwina Currie next.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Now, breaking tonight, rumour has it that our very own Nigel Farage will be heading down under for the next exciting series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, alongside a host of other stars, including staunch TV Remainer, who I've got to say I've never heard of, but apparently he doesn't like Brexit. The Sun has reported, though it's not officially confirmed yet, that the GB News star will mix with campmates from the worlds of Albert Square, MasterChef, Made in Chelsea, and even Britney Spears' little sister. Nigel will reportedly join This Morning presenter Josie Gibson, champion jockey Frankie Dettori, and crucially, outspoken French Remainer Fred Sirier in Australia. In 2019, the charismatic star of TV show First Dates was involved in a row over his settled status in the UK after Brexit, and once said he was made to feel like a second-class citizen by the Home Office. In 2017, Fred also slammed Nigel as irrelevant and useless, while in a more recent attack called him a coward who likes the sound of his voice too much. Well, could the king of politics, the king of Brexit, become the king of the jungle? Let's ask Christopher Biggins and Edwina Curry. Biggins, unbelievable story. First of all, do you think people will be tuning in to see Nigel?
Well, I certainly will. I can't wait. I think it's a very good booking. And this morning, though, I was very, very appalled to hear that on a TV morning programme, ITV morning programme, that he was getting £1.5 million for his performance. Much more than I got, and I'm sure much more than Edwina got.
So unfair, so unfair. Edwina, is Nigel taking a political gamble going in the jungle?
Well, I think he's got a very good chance of actually winning it. I mean, Christopher won it, so he knows how that is done. And I didn't. I would think that probably he's getting about £1 million, because I think Frankie Dettori is getting about $500,000. He's very good indeed. He's just as good as Nigel is when it comes to negotiating money. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to tune in and see this with this Frenchman. I gather he pronounces his name Siri X. Which sounds a bit like serious sex or something, you know. They're going to be fun together. They are both attractive men in their own way. In fact, there's one or two others that are really worth seeing. The whole idea, of course, Christopher and I didn't count for this, but the whole idea is to get people to take off most of their clothes in the hot sunshine of Australia so that we, in the rain and the cold and the snow here, can just look at them with adoring eyes and really enjoy a feast for real normal human beings to enjoy. It's going to be fun.
Mylene Klass, Christopher Biggins, is very famous for her outdoor, rather X-rated shower that she took. Do you think that Nigel will try to replicate that iconic scene? Do you think he'll be getting the guns out?
Oh, I do hope not. Oh, I think I could be ill. No. I think that's purely for the mining classes of this world. I mean, and I think Edwina's right. It would be nice to see a few bodies in there. But I think what would be even better is I think there's going to be so many clashes. And I think that's where our man will be, Nigel will be absolutely wonderful. He will speak his mind. He will take it in both hands. And I think I agree with Edwina. He could become the new king of the jungle.
Edwina, is there a danger for ITV bosses that they pay Nigel all this money and then he gets voted off after a week or two?
Oh, no, I think people will vote to keep him in because they'll want to see him do the trials. That's part of the point of it. And they'll vote in large numbers to see him eating something quite disgusting and how he behaved. Now, the problem for Nigel is a different one because he's got a big ego, a very high opinion of himself, naturally. He's done well in so many ways, except when he stands for Parliament. He's never managed to get himself elected, and I think 7 tries, something like that. But, of course, he doesn't control the editing. And as Christopher will remember, the story that goes out about you is not necessarily the story that you want to put out when you are actually in the jungle yourself. If he thinks he's going to be able to talk an awful lot about Brexit and put his point of view across, he'll have to get that through the editing suite first, and the odds are that they won't do that. They're much more likely to put it out when he's cross or lost his temper with somebody or said something sharp, in which case he isn't going to look like such a nice guy. And people will vote for him to do the next Bush-Tucker trial as well.
Indeed. I mean, he will be doing Bush-Tucker trials every night, won't he, Biggins?
Oh, without a doubt. And, of course, I think the main people who are going to miss out on this, which is very sad, is the Royal Bank Coots. I mean, Coots must be furious they're not going to get that $1.5 million in their hands.
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, I'm fascinated by the political implications of this, Christopher, because I just wonder whether people will get to know Nigel and fall in love with him, and that might make them fall in love with Brexit.
Well, I think they will fall in love with it because, I don't know, Edwina, you're a woman. Could you fall in love with him? I know your husband very well. What do you think?
He's not quite my type. Plus, I think I'm just about old enough to be his mother. So that's probably ruling him out. However, one of the possibilities that's in his mind is that if he wants to lead a serious political party in future, then it would probably have to be the Conservatives. And the real worry would be if he decides that he is so popular as a result of doing well in the jungle that he's going to go for a Conservative seat, become a Tory candidate. And that could really set the cat among the pigeons. I mean, my goodness, the jungle this year could actually change the face of British politics for many years to come.
Let's be honest, Biggins, it's good news for Nigel's accountant. It could be good news for his political career because I think it will humanise Nigel and people will get to know him. And I know the guy, he's an absolute gentleman. But it's pretty good news for GB News as well, don't you think? That our biggest star is going to be the most talked about celebrity in the country for 3 weeks, allegedly at least.
Yes,
well,
I mean, it's going to be...
Right.
It's going to be wonderful for GB News. It's wonderful. I'm ashamed to say that, or rather not ashamed, but I feel very sorry that Boris Johnson, one of your new recruits, is not going in. That would be fascinating, the two of them in there.
Yeah, most definitely. And here's one guarantee. If Nigel goes into the jungle, which the Sun are saying he is, Edwina, ratings will go through the roof. I think they might break all records.
Oh, I think that's at least possible. The year that I was in, 2014, we had 11 million people watching regularly night after night, and we kept coming top trending tweet of the night 6 nights in a row when I had a row with an American playgirl airhead. That's the nicest thing I can say about her. She was gorgeous but to look at, but she didn't have a brain. And I got into an argument with her, and I think I won that one. However, yeah, we did very, very well then. If Nigel, actually, what makes great TV is not if they get on, not if they are harmonious and if he's a gent. That's boring. What really makes great TV is if there is a conflict of some kind in which people can take sides, that has everybody arguing. And you'll have us both, Chris and me, on again talking about it, and we will be so excited, and we'll be watching it every night or in the morning if, like me, sometimes you have to go to bed because you've got to do the school run. Hey, but, you know, life is like that.
Definitely. Biggins, listen, before we let you go, Biggins, you are the king of the jungle, and that can never be taken away from you. Can you just give me a sense of any area in which Nigel will struggle down there in Australia?
Well, I think that... how old is Nigel? Do we know how old he is?
Well, I think Nigel's got to be in his sort of late 50s, early 60s. He's 59.
Yeah,
there you go. He looks about 30.
69.
He's 59.
59. Well, I think he might have a few problems with the physical things. I don't think he'll have any problems at all with eating all those horrendous things. I think he'll step those little penises down beautifully. But I think that you know, I can't wait, because I think he's funny, he's bright, and he'll bring a whole new wonderful presence to that show, which is needed.
There you go. Well, listen, what a treat to have both of you on. This is The Sun who are calling it. They are saying that Nigel Farage is going into the jungle. We can't confirm that. It is speculation at the moment. But if it happens, he will go and smash it. And I think he can win. Now, folks, lots more to come despite facing calls for the sack after she branded policing of left-wing protests biased. The straight-talking Suella Braverman simply speak for millions of ordinary Brits. I'll ask my panel of top pundits when they return, and tomorrow's papers. But next, with the country at breaking point, is King Charles right that we should be more welcoming to refugees? I'll ask former Home Office Minister Anne Widdecombe whether our monarch should keep his nose out of politics. Plus, if Anne was Home Secretary, how would she handle the marches this weekend? Anne Widdecombe is next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time.
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Should Suella Braverman resign or be fired by Rishi Sunak? Absolutely not, says Fran. She's the only person in the party with balls. Peter says, Mark, your monologue made Suella's case far more eloquently than she did. That's a large part of the problem. Namely, she's not intellectually nimble enough or wise enough to pick her words. Keep those emails coming. Now, the country may be at a breaking point after years of uncontrolled mass migration, but King Charles has discussed the need to make refugees more welcome at a charity event with Sir Michael Palin. The Monty Python star spoke to the King yesterday evening at a humanitarian reception held at Buckingham Palace, and Palin told reporters he asked what I was doing and was talking about refugees, actually, and the refugee problem and trying to find a way of absorbing refugees into the country and using their talents. And this is something I totally agree. Anne Widdecombe now joins us to reflect on this, former Home Office Minister. And is King Charles right that we should be more welcoming to refugees?
I think the King should be very, very careful about getting embroiled in this one. There is no doubt that if somebody is a genuine refugee and is given settlement here, that of course we should be welcoming. But that is very different against the background that we're now talking about, when we've got the small boats coming in day after day, illegal immigration at an all-time record, huge pressure on local authorities, the expenses of hotels and all the rest of it. Perhaps he should pick his words more carefully. This is the King. This is not the Prince of Wales. It's the King. And I think he should be a lot more careful about what he says.
It's a dilemma for royals, isn't it, Anne? They can either sit there and do nothing and be called freeloaders, but if they become active, they're told to stay out of politics. Where should they strike the balance? Do you think Elizabeth II got the balance right?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's what I was about to say. You know, if you want to look at balance, you look at the late Queen, who never put a foot wrong. And she didn't go head first into controversies. Now, what she said to prime ministers in those Tuesday sessions, I don't know. But she was very, very careful about not getting the monarchy embroiled in politics. And I recommend that approach to the King. I'm a great admirer of the King. I'm a great admirer of Queen Camilla. But he does need now to understand that he is no longer the Prince of Wales. He's got to be very careful what he says.
What about his son, the Prince of Wales, Prince William, in regard to climate change? He seems to have picked up the baton from his father and he seems to be doing Charles's bidding. Is this an unwise move for our future king?
I think it's a very, very unwise move. We're already beginning to see things unravel a bit. You know, the Prime Minister has put back the targets for net zero. People aren't at all happy at having to have new boilers and cars that are of doubtful efficiency. And there's a huge question mark now arising as people are actually impacted by it, rather than climate change being some theory in the background to which everybody could sign up.
Yeah.
I just think Prince William needs to be careful.
And if you were Home Secretary, how would you be handling the marches this weekend?
Very straightforwardly, there wouldn't be any marches this weekend because I take the Reform UK line, which is, and the government have had time to do it. They've had time to do it. We should introduce a law that says that on Armistice Day and on Remembrance Sunday, if they are separate, as they quite often are, on those 2 days, there should be no marches in support of anything at all in central London, not even the causes that I believe in, no marches in favour of anything at all, because the only show in town should be the honouring of the dead and the honouring of veterans. That should be all that those days actually mean. It's not asking much. There are 365 days in the year, and people can demonstrate on 363 of them. But could they leave Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday alone.
And I look forward to catching up with you on Remembrance Sunday at exactly 10:15. That's Mark Dolan tonight. So thank you, Anne. Lots more to come. It's a very busy hour coming up, let me tell you. Don't forget the email, mark@gbnews.com. Coming up, as poppy sellers vanish from train stations, should the police do more to protect our veteran volunteers and stand up for the British way of life? Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie has his say on that very shortly. But next, she shoots from the hip and is facing calls to be sacked by Rishi Sunak. But is straight-talking Suella Braverman simply speaking for millions of ordinary Brits? My panel of top pundits will debate that. And a breaking story, Nigel Farage. Could he go from being the king of Brexit to the king of the jungle? Because the Sun newspaper are reporting that he is going to Australia. He'll be the biggest star on that show if he does it. They're talking about £1.5 million. Let me tell you, that's not even enough, because the guy is a superstar. So can he win I'm a Celebrity? We'll discuss that and much more. See you in 2.
Good evening. A bit of a chilly start tomorrow, but for most it'll be a fine, bright day with sunny spells. Some heavy showers, particularly in the south early on. We've still got low pressure dominating the scene, so it is still spinning up plenty of showers, and particularly tonight as the isobars squeeze together across South Wales and southwest England. It's going to get very windy, so further heavy showers to come in here. The showers elsewhere tending to ease off. Some lively ones around right now, but turning fairly dry through the night for much of the Midlands, eastern England, northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Where we've got the clear skies and light winds, there will be a frost across parts of Scotland further south, mostly holding up at 5 or 6. But quite a wet start to the morning for South Wales and southwest England. Some heavy showers moving through here. They will move through and then get into the southeast for a time before tending to disappear before lunchtime. Showers through the day across northern Scotland and some for Northern Ireland, and later on we'll see a few developing over northwest England and North Wales. But for a good chunk of the country, it's a dry and bright day tomorrow. Good spells of sunshine. On the cool side, temperatures mostly in single figures, maybe 11 or 12 in the south. Certainly a cold start to the weekend, a more extensive frost across northern Britain and a few fog patches as well. But once they've gone, most of us having a fine day on Saturday. Still a few showers in northern Scotland with a bit of a breeze and some rain down to the southwest late on. That'll spread in during Sunday, and again on Sunday some frost and fog early on.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it is 10 o'clock. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News Tonight. Suella Braverman goes nuclear. After a series of run-ins with her party and the PM in recent months, the Home Secretary sparked more outrage today by penning a scathing newspaper article that slammed biased British cops and accused Palestinian marchers of being riddled with Islamic extremism, despite not getting the all-clear from Number 10. But as Suella is rumoured to be imminently facing the chop from Rishi Sunak, does she actually speak for millions of ordinary Brits? That's the debate next with my top panel this evening. Suzanne Evans, John Sargent and Amy Nicole Turner. Also tonight, should the police be doing more to protect poppy sellers amid these protests and stand up for the British way of life? I'll quiz the most patriotic editor to ever grace Fleet Street's Sun legend Kelvin Mackenzie shortly. Speaking of the Sun, the newspaper is reporting tonight that our very own Nigel Farage will be heading down under for the next series of I'm a Celebrity. It's still yet to be officially confirmed, but could the king of UK politics become the king of the jungle? My panel return to discuss that shortly. Plus, as sources claim Harry and Meghan have been left fuming at this.
Sir, your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Will the Sussexes be able to change their spoiled brat image after being mocked in popular American cartoon Family Guy? Royal masterminds Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier give their expert analysis in Uncancelled later. I'll crown my latest Greatest Britain and Union Jackass of the week, and tomorrow's newspaper front pages have dropped. So, lots to get through. Can Nigel Farage win I'm a Celebrity? We'll debate that shortly. But first, the news and Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, Mark. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing calls to sack Suella Braverman after she defied Downing Street with her Met criticism comments. In an article in The Times today, the Home Secretary accuses the Metropolitan Police of playing favourites with pro-Palestinian protesters. Labour's National Campaign Coordinator Pat McFadden says that she breached the code by failing to clear the editorial with Number 10. London Mayor Sadiq Khan says he's astonished by the article.
I think her behaviour over the last few weeks has been behaviour that is irresponsible. Her article in The Times was incorrect and inflammatory. At a time when senior politicians should be bringing communities together, uniting people who have differences, instead she is stoking divisions. And I worry, as a consequence of her words and her behaviour, you'll see this Saturday on Armistice Day, the far right, EDL and other people turning up on Saturday causing problems.
Meanwhile, Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer says people shouldn't feel discouraged from joining in this weekend's remembrance events in London.
They're not going to be anywhere near the cenotaph, and the Metropolitan Police are bending over backwards to make sure that everybody who comes up into London, whether you're selling poppies, whether you're attending a reunion or you're going to remembrance, is completely unmolested and allowed to get on with what is a really special and important weekend this weekend. We spent all week making sure that can happen, and I really encourage people to come into London and remember in the way we always do this weekend.
Israel has agreed to a series of pauses in fighting in northern Gaza. The White House says there'll be daily 4-hour pauses starting from today. It comes after discussions between US and Israeli officials in recent days, including talks with US President Joe Biden had with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The US says it will allow people to get out of harm's way and for delivery of humanitarian aid. The Supreme Court is set to give its decision on whether a government plan to deport asylum seekers to Rwanda is lawful. The Court of Appeal ruled in June the plan to deport those seeking asylum to the East African nation was unlawful. The Home Office challenged that ruling last month. The decision on the challenge is expected to be made on Wednesday. And the Queen has commemorated the nation's war dead at a ceremony at Westminster Abbey's Field of Remembrance. Camilla paid tribute and recognised the sacrifices of those who fought and died for their country in her first visit to the Abbey since the coronation. After placing the cross down, Camilla and hundreds of veterans fell silent as the chimes of Big Ben rang out. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. And now it's back to Mark.
A very warm welcome to Sophia Wensler, a brand new star on GB News. And let me tell you, we go back, brilliant broadcaster. Listen, folks, it's time now for tomorrow's front pages. And we start with the Metro, and they lead with "Give Suella her marching orders." We'll be debating that shortly. iNewspaper, "Sack me if you dare. Braverman defies PM's authority." Independent, "Sack Braverman now or look weak." George Osborne tells the Prime Minister. And Daily Express, Israel agrees to 4-hour pauses in fighting. And Suella's future teeters on the brink. Those are your front pages. Let's get reaction now to the big stories of the day with political commentator Suzanne Evans, TV news legend, former BBC chief political correspondent John Sargent, and the brilliant author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, as we've just seen from the front pages, all eyes are on Suella Braverman and her civil war with Tory colleagues. The Home Secretary has been on a collision course with the Prime Minister across various issues in recent months, including calling rough sleeping in tents sometimes a lifestyle choice and marking multiculturalism a failure. Suella poked the hornet's nest once more today by penning that scathing article in The Times without the green light from Number 10. It was all about biased police at the pro-Palestine marches. Braverman was quickly rounded on, with a senior Tory MP branding her comments a sackable offence and Keir Starmer calling on Rishi Sunak to show her the door. But here's the question. Is she simply speaking for millions of ordinary Brits? Is she speaking for you? Let me know, Mark at gbnews.com. Let me ask John Sargent.
I don't think she should go straight away. If I was Rishi Sunak, I'd wait to see what happened about the demonstration on Saturday. I'd wait to see what the Supreme Court was saying about the Rwanda decision. And I'd see how that was going, because that could change in all sorts of ways. It could change the position of the government and what the chances were of the government succeeding in these areas. Otherwise, she seems to be goading the Prime Minister. And if you goad the Prime Minister, there are two ways of looking at it. If you're Rishi Sunak, you can say, oh, she's goading me to sack her, I won't bother. You know, keep her in. So it can go either way. There's no doubt that if it was a simple time, if we didn't have an election next year, her future with this particular government would be over.
In terms of her relationship with the Prime Minister, is this a case for Rishi Sunak of keep your friends close and your enemies closer?
Well, that's it. I mean, you've always got to be careful of that, because she has got a tremendously, so I don't know, practiced way of hitting the headlines, and that will not change. So you really don't want her in the backbenches saying, ha-ha. You know, so I told you about...
And becoming a political martyr.
Yes, and also, you see, on something like this, let's say she was sacked tomorrow, which is what I'm sure Rishi Sunak and other people would like to see, and she then sort of whips up the issue of the demonstration. She's already whipped it up quite a lot. But she could, you know, really make things much harder for the government and for the police and everything else, goading people to say, right, if this is a hate march, we'll have one, and we'll have a counter-hate march. And once you get to that level, extremists on both sides, and they may be quite small in number to all the people that could be involved, but they can have the most amazing battle. And they can have that battle across London. And the police would find it very difficult to cope with.
Well, and they're already struggling as we speak. Amy, does Suella Braverman not speak for millions of ordinary Brits?
I think that she speaks for the further right of the Conservative Party, which I think...
But what about my viewers and listeners who email in to this show telling me that they love Suella Braverman because she says what they're thinking? Are they far right?
I think they are on the right of the Conservative
Are you calling GB News' viewers and listeners far-right extremists?
I'm saying they're on the right of the Conservative Party.
That's not necessarily true. We have many viewers and listeners who are former Labour voters who voted for Boris in 2019 because he supported Brexit.
But
I'll tell you where they are now. They're politically homeless.
But it came from Euroscepticism, which is typically on the right of the Conservative Party.
Oh, come on.
That's not true.
Absolute bosh.
That's not true.
The Communist Party of Great Britain supported Brexit. Are they
As
far right?
as did Jeremy Corbyn for many years.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm simply saying that Suella Braverman is from the ERG. So
you think she only speaks for the political right?
No, I'm saying she's more popular with the political right because of her views. I don't think it's going to be a very popular, a liberal view to say that homelessness is a lifestyle choice. That's a particularly less than compassionate view, which is going to strike a chord with the further right of the Conservative Party.
I'm not sure about this right versus left, because I think there are many ordinary people out there.
Left-wing values?
Well, I think there are plenty of fed-up Labour voters who admire Suella Braverman. What do you think, Suzanne?
I think that's right. I mean, this whole idea of left and right is nonsensical, really. It's a tool to batter people with from whatever your own standpoint is. I mean, I'm called far-right all the time, but actually I think I have some quite left-wing ideas. As far as Suella Braverman's concerned, I think she is speaking for the silent majority. And I think if Sunak sacks Suella, he is sunk. Frankly, if he thinks his poll ratings are in the doldrums now, just wait to see what he does if he sacks a woman who has this knack. John, you actually said you thought she had a knack for hitting the political headlines.
Yeah.
I think actually
But getting very little done behind
her knack is actually for saying what the majority of people in this country are thinking, and that's why she hits the headlines, because the Westminster bubble throws up its hands in horror, feeds into this far-right meme, because it doesn't understand what people.
Although Amy raises an interesting point. Go on, John.
Just saying the other point about Rishi Sunak is he doesn't strike me as being someone who's very political. I know it's a weird thing to say about the Prime Minister, but where she's got politics coming out of her fingers, and that shows. And I think the problem that he's got is that his character is very much someone who did well at school and did well at university and did well in business. So he's working away in what he would regard as a sensible and straightforward way. Politics isn't often like that.
But what I'm saying is that that letter she wrote for the Times was for no one but herself and her own political ambitions. She is in a splinter group of the Conservatives.
She pointed out
joined with Danny Kruger, Miriam Cates, that faction of the party, which I think she'll probably leave in the next few weeks or be ejected, and that part of the party will come to the fore in opposition.
Amy raises an interesting question about whether or not Suella Braverman does much. She talks a good game. Is she all talk and no trousers?
I think there's something about that. I think she's also hamstrung in many ways. She doesn't have the backing of the whole of the Conservative Party or the rest of the cabinet in many cases.
Almost MPs.
You're right, actually, John, in a way. You look at half Tory MPs, and I frankly think they should be in the Labour Party or the Liberal Party, not the Conservative Party.
They don't like her.
They're not really talking about Conservative values, as I consider.
And also, they want a Home Secretary that people will look at as being solid and calm and peacemaking. They don't want a Home Secretary to be too exciting, running about.
John, briefly.
We want a home country that sorts out crime, sorts out extremism, sorts out immigration, and gets on and does the job. And frankly, Suella's the only person I see that could do that.
No, she doesn't. She just points them out. She just points out all the problems.
Well, that's a start, Amy.
It is. No, I think Amy raises a fair point that the jury's out there on her actions rather than her words.
Yeah.
John, briefly, I've only got a couple of seconds. Give me 10 seconds. You know that catchphrase. It's also the name of your best-selling book, which is in all good bookshops and Kindle. Listen. The one issue that's very totemic for the government is stop the boats. And she's the face of that policy. Sure. So if she goes, then I think that will look to voters like Rishi Sunak has given up trying to stop the boats.
Sure, no, I think that's where the next week is. This may seem exciting week and interesting and all sorts of people arguing. I think next week is going to be really important.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, listen, folks, let's have a bit of Christmas cheer, shall we? Because the Christmas advert season is fully underway, and I'm very excited about it. In fact, you may know it's been a campaign of mine, because Marks & Spencer's literally set fire to the festive season with the most conceited commercial, packed full of lovies who were torching the memory of Christmas. They even got rid of the word Christmas, and they just called it Thatmas. What an insult. Well, the biggest player in the game, John Lewis, released its much-anticipated ad today. It's all about a young boy growing up as a Venus flytrap. Growing a Venus... Do you know what? Watch the bloody ad.
It's terrible.
La vita è una festa, la vita è una festa, la vita è una
Great stuff, John Lewis saves Christmas. Other shops and supermarkets are available. Now, coming up, The Sun is reporting that our very own Nigel Farage will be heading down under for the next exciting series of I'm a Celebrity. It's still yet to be officially confirmed, but could the king of UK politics become the king of the jungle? I'll be asking my panel of top pundits that very shortly. But first, as poppy sellers vanish from rail stations ahead of Armistice Day, should the police do more to protect our veteran volunteers and stand up for the British way of life? Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie is furious about this, and he's live next.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Back to the show, we'll get to your emails very shortly. And the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has called for poppy sellers to be fully protected after volunteers look to have disappeared from Britain's busiest railway stations. Staff confirmed there would be no sellers at London Liverpool Street after 500 pro-Palestine protesters staged a sit-in. Volunteers have also not been seen at Victoria or Euston stations. And at Charing Cross, 3 volunteers at a poppy stand saw themselves surrounded by demonstrators. There's also stories about Edinburgh's Waverley Station crowded out over the weekend as well. Let's get the views of Kelvin Mackenzie. Kelvin, let's take a look at the front page of the Sun newspaper today, a paper you used to edit, of course, when it was selling millions of copies. Where have all the poppies gone? Referencing the number of people not selling poppies at the moment for fear of attack. Do you recognise your country anymore, Kelvin?
Well, it's clearly that no amount of police and no amount of soldiers can actually protect the poppy sellers, because the poppy sellers themselves are in fear of what's going to happen to them. And on that basis, they're simply not going to turn up. So for the British Legion and the vital money that is raised through poppies, this is a disaster. But it actually represents something else. I think right now there is a fear in our society about being caught out on the wrong side of a protest, whether it's Just Oil, where an ambulance couldn't get through the other day, or it's you are a Jew and you're in West London on Saturday afternoon. You know, how are you going to feel about that? This is the first time I have ever thought that it would be dangerous to be caught out somewhere on a London Underground station, a mainline station, walking down through Chiswick on a Saturday afternoon. There are a whole series of areas of life which I find very, very uneasy. And for the poppy sellers, it's a disgrace. But there's lots more going on. The idea, for instance, that Braverman can say something pretty straightforward, right? That the police act in one way to one group, but act in a different way to another group, is plain. I mean, the number of times that on GB News and other stations, they've raised the fact that a police officer took the knee for the Black Lives Matter movement, that kind of thing. And now we're seeing it for another group. She uses the expression, which is the area, it is this expression, which it may well cost her a job, which is that some group, the police are asserting primacy towards, okay? Well, she knows which group that is. That's the group that are going to be out marching on Saturday afternoon. They're going to be coming from all over the country and mainly from one particular community. And this is the first time. You may be able to remember something else. Your panel may be able to remember something else. I can never remember that, where one group acts against, you know, for themselves and for their people, but create a sense of fear towards everybody else. When was the last time that was true? And which group was it that did that? I personally, honestly, I can't remember it. And I find it very, very disturbing. And the poppy sellers, and I salute the Sun for grabbing hold of that, you know, that they manage, when a paper like the Sun puts that on page one, it represents the beating heart of ordinary people. And ordinary people, I think, especially if you live in London, would feel very uneasy right now.
Indeed, I just wonder, Kelvin, whether the cops are already outnumbered. I wonder whether the authorities have already lost this battle against extremism.
Well, I feel sorry for being a police officer. What must it be like to be a police officer on Saturday? And what will it be like if there is any trouble? What will happen to our the Metropolitan Commissioner, right? An enormously clever guy. I heard Sir Tom Windsor, a really clever guy, talking about him, saying what a fantastic politician, what a fantastic policeman he was this morning. Supposing he has made an error. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the leaders of this march, who all, or at least a couple of them, have links in the past to Hamas, which is incredible. I mean, they're an outlawed terrorist group, for God's sake, right? How did they come to be the leader of this march? I hope to God that no police officer is injured. You know, it's difficult. I mean, I could see 150,000 people turning up on Saturday afternoon. It would be the biggest demonstration this country had ever seen, possibly by a factor of 6 or 7, right? And there will be bad guys among them. And the people who suffer, right? The people who suffer are twofold. One, police officers who could be seriously hurt. And the other people who suffer are Jews, right? a massively important small group of people to our country that bring great wealth and great creativity and great community to us, right? What about them? Like, nobody talks about them anymore. Nobody talks, and yet they won't be leaving their homes, will they? You tell me what Jewish families, right, who have any real sense of themselves, why would they leave their homes? What? They can't wear their yarmulkes, they can't wear their skull caps, right? Because if they do, what could happen? What could happen? And this is a serious issue. And the Poppy Day thing is just an example made flesh of the dangers that exist out there on not only on Saturday, but around us all. It's an incredible moment. It's a very serious moment. And I'm very grateful that you allow me enough time to say so.
Well, Kelvin, we're joined at the hip on this one. Your comments reflect very much what I said earlier in my big opinion, and I look forward to catching up soon, Kelvin. More power to you. The former editor of The Sun newspaper, co-founder of TalkSport, Kelvin Mackenzie. Coming up, as sources claim that Harry and Meghan are in panic mode and fuming at being portrayed as, quote, self-entitled grifters in this Family Guy clip.
Time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
Well, they don't like being joked about. They've reportedly branded that savage. So will the Sussexes be able to change their spoiled brat image? My royal masterminds, Lady C and Phil Dampier, give their expert analysis shortly. But next, in the media buzz, The Sun is reporting that our very own Nigel Farage will be heading down under for the next series of I'm a Celebrity. Now, it's still yet to be officially confirmed, but could the king of UK politics become the king of the jungle? I will debate that with my panel next. It's all about Nigel. Can he win? See you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Welcome back. More front pages have arrived. We start with the Daily Mail. Come for Suella and you come for us all. Tory writes warning to Rishi amid fears he's thinking of sacking Home Secretary. Daily Telegraph now. Sunak faces calls to sack Braverman. Israel to fight on after US says humanitarian pauses have been agreed. And COVID vaccine compensation scheme must be reformed. A court case going through about the AstraZeneca vaccine, which has been described as faulty or flawed. And let's see how that one plays out. Curious that the other papers aren't reporting it, especially The Guardian. Let's have a look at The Guardian now. Pressure grows on Sunak to sack Braverman over clash with police. And ceasefire deal to free hostages was rejected by Israeli PM, say The Guardian. Well, I'd like to see the fine print of that deal, wouldn't you? OK, let's get views now of my top pundits. This evening, political commentator Suzanne Evans, former BBC chief political correspondent, much more than that, political editor of ITN, and, of course, TV news legend John Sargent, and the brilliant author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. So, breaking tonight, a bombshell showbiz exclusive courtesy of The Sun, who are reporting that our very own GB News superstar Nigel Farage could be taking a trip down under and entering the I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here jungle. Though it's not officially confirmed yet, Nigel will reportedly appear alongside a host of stars, including This Morning presenter Josie Gibson, jockey Frankie Dettori and TV chef Fred Sirieix. So what do we think about this? Can Nigel go all the way? Can he go from being king of Brexit to king of the jungle? Amy Nicole-Turner.
Yeah, I think he will, actually. He's obviously going to go in there, just like when I met him. I hate everything he stands for. I hate all his political beliefs, but core is he charming. But let's keep him on TV and not in politics. It's like Boris. Did we learn nothing from Boris? Big personality, brilliant on television. Leave them there.
Well, unlike Boris, Nigel Farage, a man of substance. He campaigned for Brexit and he made it happen.
Yeah, I think he's going to end up leader of the Conservative Party, and this little country's going to learn nothing from the cult of personality, and they're going to vote again for Nigel Farage.
Now, John, Nigel Farage is not without his political ambitions. He's told me on this show, never say never in terms of joining the Tory party, even leading it, or becoming Prime Minister, or an MP. If something outrageous happens in the jungle, could that scupper his chances?
Well, of course it could. I mean, it depends what happened. But all these things you've got to be very careful with, because people are watching it and they're watching how you react, and they're coming to decisions which people then stick to. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, most definitely.
My feeling is, though, he's got tremendous skill with people, and he's got lots of ability to get on.
Yeah.
And he's going to put his, I hope, sort of political pulpit to one side and concentrate, as he'll be very good at, concentrate on how does he win over the other people. They will know he's the favourite. They will know he's been paid more than they have. So he's got quite a bit of work to do. So make sure that, you know, you volunteer for things, and all those people skills he will have.
It'll be interesting to see what the others are.
The person I knew, Tony Blackburn, was a school friend of mine, and he won, I think, the second series. But he's very personable.
He most definitely is. I think Harry Redknapp was a winner of it, and Christopher Biggins, who joined us earlier. Suzanne, you know Nigel pretty well. How do you think he'll fare in the jungle if he goes?
I think Amy hit the nail on the head. Nigel can be incredibly charming, and I think perhaps the other people going into the jungle will think, oh my gosh, Nigel Farage.
They won't be expecting
garlic and wooden stakes and all the rest of it. And I think they'll be very pleasantly surprised, because he's great one-to-one, very entertaining. He has a host of the most wonderful stories to tell. And I think if he's in the jungle, and it's a very emotional experience, and, you know, if he talks about the price that he's had to pay for fighting for Brexit, I think that is a very powerful story. My worry is he's not so physically fit, and it's going to be tough You've got tough conditions there, so I do hope the production...
Not so physically fit. How dare you? I share a locker room with him. The guy's body is a temple.
Oh,
He's an Adonis. Listen, you wait till he does the Mylene class in the shower. Right?
What?
Mylene class. Yeah, she's a pop star who took a shower and it became an iconic symbol of the show.
She's lovely.
Yeah. And also, John, there was Noel Edmonds who revealed to the world quite an impressive six-pack when he went into the jungle. So perhaps Nigel's been over at Virgin Active, you know, pumping iron.
The key thing is that he'll be very good at this. Just be modest and give the impression that you didn't solve Brexit on your own. Don't talk about Brexit.
He won't talk about Brexit. He'll just be charming. It'll be like when Katie Hopkins went.
Will he take the bait? Will he take the bait?
Well, he should be careful because they don't. What he mustn't do is say, "Look how well I did," because it doesn't work very well. He's going to have to work hard at this, but he must be the person. Oh, do you think so? And I see.
Oh, I can't believe I like him. It's going to be another Matt Hancock.
By the way, dear Nigel, he is a fit guy, but he suffered quite a serious accident on a helicopter.
He's had a plane crash.
Yeah, plane.
He's had cancer.
Right, and he's got. I think his back and his neck are not the best.
Absolutely not.
So, in a way, does it not show the grit of the guy that he's willing to go into the jungle?
Absolutely. You'd have to pay me a hell of a lot of money to get me in there. I tell you, I couldn't cope with all that eating creepy crawlies and snakes and.
But what do they say? Never talk about politics, religion. What's the other one?
Politics, religion, and what is the other one?
I can't remember the other one. But I don't think he'll talk about any of those, and that's why he's going to.
Now, will he be a team player? Do you think he'll do those challenges well and bring home the stars?
Oh, yeah.
You do think so? He'll do his best. Well, he is a born winner. And listen, John, you've got an experience.
Besties with Fred. It's going to be all.
Of course he will. They'll be besties. John, you have had a taste of reality TV.
I have.
You took the world by storm on Strictly.
Yes.
You did a great job, acquitted yourself very well, I thought. You've so far resisted invitations to go into the jungle. Why?
Well, there are lots of arguments for that part. I just wouldn't like it. But no, what you've got to
Sergeant doesn't need the money, does he? He's an independent, wealthy man.
The best thing, if you can, is to take the game, whatever the game is, seriously, but not yourself seriously. But if people know that you've worked it out, as I did on Strictly, they'll say, "Oh, he's going to try and do that again. Let's get him down." People have a tremendous desire to see you, A, built up if you're not going to succeed very well, but also if you think like Nigel Farage, everyone thinks, oh, he'll do well because he's personable and all this, charismatic, then he's in danger because people just think, oh, wipe the smile off his face, get at him.
Or, of course, it could be the opposite, that people vote for him to stay in because they want him to see him go through all the trials because they hate him.
Well, the producers, Amy, the producers will be furious if he gets voted out. They want him in the final. There's 1.5 million reasons why they do.
He's going to be doing those trials back to back. Let's start with. He will be eating all the kangaroo anus. He will be doing every single trial for the first however long.
Amy, what does it mean for GB News?
I think we might be opening ourselves up to a whole new audience, Mark.
Well, it has that potential, doesn't it? Because Nigel is, I think, it's fair to say, the biggest star on GB News.
They'll tune in, see him on here and change their mind.
Well, listen, there's always the hope. Now, of course, we don't know if this is an actual kosher story or not, but it's definitely got legs. I think the Sun are running it as an exclusive. And, of course, it's a long 3 weeks. What's great about this show is that you get to know people, Suzanne. They might be nice on day 1 or day 2, but by sort of 5-10 days in, you know the real person. And we will see the real Nigel. Are there elements of Nigel that you know about that we will discover in the jungle?
I think you might find that he's perhaps not quite as confident as people think.
Is he shy?
There is some
is he shy, Nigel?
Sometimes. I wouldn't say he's shy, but perhaps there's a slight insecurity, which we might see, I don't know. And I think perhaps his irascible nature as well. When he is in physical pain, of course, he gets irascible, as we all do. I mean, that's perfectly human and normal.
Yeah.
So, but
I mean, does he have a short temper? Have you seen him explode? Because, I mean, you've been very much involved in Brexit politics for many years.
I've never seen him explode.
Right, so he's not got a fiery temper.
No.
Does he fall out with people?
Well, he kind of fell out with me a bit.
Oh, hello.
Well,
There's an exclusive.
I say he fell out with me. I didn't fall out with him, but I think there were other people involved who were pushing buttons and pulling strings and being very underhand.
And do you think that the personal politics will play out when Nigel's in the jungle? Do you think he'll do in the jungle what he's done in the political scene, you know?
No, because I think the thing about Nigel, and certainly in my case, as I said, there were other people pushing his buttons and pulling his strings. In the jungle, he's on his own.
Yes, now,
no,
John...
He's got to make his own decisions.
Yeah. No, the key thing with all these panel games and everything else is you've got to try and form alliances. That doesn't mean to say you have to form friendships, but you've got to make it absolutely clear. Have a few people that you work with, and it's amazing how much further you can go in all these things.
The clock's against us. Amy, will there be romance in the jungle? Will he fall in love with someone?
What? Isn't he married? I don't know. What's his?
Well, yeah, but
what's his marital status?
Ask John. Listen, ask John about.
He's in love with Fred from First Date. They're going to have a bromance.
Well, I know.
We're going to be like, ha ha ha.
I was going to say,
but all that stuff about you, Nige.
Exactly. Ask John about the curse of Strictly. John, there's one thing that he will struggle without, and that is his pint of beer in the evening, gin and tonic.
Yeah.
No booze. I mean, that's why you said no, isn't it?
Every time he has his show, there's always a bottle of wine in the green room, which I'm all here for.
He won't struggle with that. He's done dry January. I've seen him do that a few times. He'll be all right.
Let me tell you, January, dry January. There you go. Well, Nigel will not be dry in the jungle. OK, folks, lots to get through. Folks, what we've got to do is our Greatest Britain and Union jackass. But first, as sources claim Harry and Meghan are in panic mode after being portrayed as, quote, self-entitled grifters in popular American cartoon Family Guy, will the Sussexes be able to change their spoiled brat image? My royal masterminds, Lady C and Phil Dampier, tackle that bombshell. Plus, what about this royal snubgate? What is the latest in terms of the Sussexes being banned from the King's birthday celebrations? See you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Time now for our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are in panic mode and reportedly fuming at being portrayed as, quote, self-entitled grifters in a popular American cartoon show called Family Guy. According to a close source, the royal runaways think the episode is savage and even called it an outrageous slur. Perhaps they'll sue. Here is the Sussex-bashing clip in question. Take a listen.
Sir, your millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
Great stuff. Listen, Lady C, will the Sussexes be able to change their rather spoiled brat image, or is it here to stay?
Well, I think if they want to change it, they could try going into a 12-step program and rehab, because the fact of the matter is, every indication of their behavior is that of somebody who needs to go into the 12-step program. They are totally out of control, and they are totally undesirable, and everybody has sussed them out.
Well, I think it looks that way. The problem, Phil, is this couple don't like people joking about them.
Yeah, good evening, Mark. No, they don't, do they? I mean, I'm old enough, unfortunately, to remember Spitting Image, and when you remember what that did to certain politicians, I'm thinking particularly David Steele, it virtually ruined his career. And once people start laughing at you, once you start to become a figure of ridicule, it's very, very difficult to shake that off. And I think they've got a major problem. So I'm not surprised they are fuming. It's a lovely word, that, fuming, isn't it? But I'm not surprised they are fuming, because it's going to be very difficult. The PR people are going to try and do the best, but it's very difficult to shake it off once you're on that slope.
Now, staying on Harry and Meghan, in a bombshell development in Royal Snubgate, mentions of the couple have reportedly been banned at not one but two of King Charles's 75th birthday celebrations. In a Daily Express exclusive, aides are terrified that the dreaded H&M words, the Harry and Meghan words, will spill out in front of the King. Blimey. Lady C, are relations this bad?
They're worse. They're worse. The fact of the matter is, both the King and William don't want to hear the word Harry or the word Meghan, and they're quite right not to hear the word Harry or Meghan. Would the Virgin Mary have wanted to hear the word Judas Iscariot? And I suspect the answer is no. No, it's worse than the press and the public are making out. And you know, the King and William are human beings. And Harry and Meghan need to understand that you can only your way through life so much without causing problems for yourself. Okay. And they are total pariahs.
I won't profess to understand what that gesture meant, but I'm assuming a heavy cold. It's going around. What do you think about this, Phil?
I don't think we're going to get any messages beamed in from the couple from Montecito to the birthday celebrations. I mean, Lady C's absolutely right. They are as far apart as ever. It's a very bad situation. Having said all that, I think the King has always left the door open. And if Harry had rung him up and said, "I'd really like to come to your," but I think he would have let him. I don't think William and Kate would have been very happy. I don't think Queen Camilla would have been very happy. It would have been a very embarrassing evening all round. And he's showing no signs of doing that. But the King has always made it clear that his door is open. I just don't think this is the time. At the moment, as Lady C says, they're still as far apart as ever.
But Lady C, don't you think this is a bit petty from the King, if it's true? Worried about any mention of their name? Is he that thin-skinned?
No, I'm sorry, Mark. It's not about pettiness. If you have ever been involved with anybody who needs to be in a 12-step program, you know that there is such a thing as loving detachment, and you cannot get caught up in their games. And the King is actually playing a very good 12-step loving detachment game, so to speak. Which is the only way to cope with what is going on with Harry and Meghan. I mean, Harry, by his own account and by his own admission, uses drugs to medicate himself.
Or
and
in the past.
Meghan has the history. What?
In the past.
Well, I'm only going by what he said. And he said it, so obviously if he said it, it was in the past. But the fact of the matter is you only needed to look at him the other evening at Katy Perry. Oh.
Well, I wonder if he'd had a gin and tonic. Phil, where do the couple go from here? What is the future for their brands?
I can do with the gin and tonic at the moment, Mark, I can tell you that. I don't know what the future is, actually. I mean, they've got this high-powered PR company now. Lady C knows a lot more about them than I do. You know, they are going to be working very hard behind the scenes to try and relaunch them. We're all waiting for some sort of relaunch from Meghan, whether it's the TIG or whether it's something else or whether it's some big tie-up with some big brand. I don't know what it's going to be or whether she's going to write her own book. But they've got to find something, and at the moment it's all been negative. So, they definitely need some positive PR, and at the moment they're just not getting it.
Yeah, well, they are not getting it, are they? I mean, is there any way back for Harry to his own family outside of a divorce from Meghan, Lady C?
I think a divorce would be a good start. Otherwise, a 12-step program and maybe rehab. I think that would be another good start. But of course, everybody who knows anything about the 12-step program knows that Dr. Max Gatt was always a great believer in who you are with at the moment. You've got to give up because otherwise you're never going to achieve sobriety. So I think if we go with the 12-step program, we're beginning to get some sense of what needs to be done. A spiritual regeneration. That's what we need, a spiritual regeneration.
OK, brilliant stuff. Well, look, loving my royal experts. We'll catch up very soon. The royal masterminds, Lady C and Phil Dampier. Let me tell you that the young Duke, the Duke of Sussex, has been very clear that he only takes drugs recreationally and regrets his drug use in the past. He's talked about it in the book, and he certainly wouldn't recommend that anybody does it. Clearly, drugs are not good for you, and there's no evidence that he is an addict. So there you go. Thank you, folks. Listen, spicy stuff as always with Lady C and Phil. They'll be back soon. But it's time now, speaking of spicy, for my brilliant panel and their Greatest Britain and Union jackass. And so, Suzanne, who is your Greatest Britain today?
Well, it's Suella Braverman, because she's one of the few politicians who actually says what the majority of us are thinking. Sack her if you dare, Rishi Sunak. If you do, you'll regret it.
OK. John Sargent, your Greatest Britain.
I think Ben Stokes. I mean, they've had a horrible time in India. And what did he do yesterday? Scored 108 runs in one of the fastest centuries ever carried out by an English player. So good old Ben. That's what, if you're a great sportsman, that's what you do. When you're down, you sort of take a deep breath and get back and do well.
Absolutely. What a star. How about you, Amy, your Greatest Britain?
I've picked John Lewis. I loved this advert. I was a single parent for 7 years and I never saw any representation of families like mine. And it was just so affirming to see that portrayed, as 1/4 of families in the UK are single-parent families.
OK, let's take a little look or a listen if you're listening on the radio. If you were listening, it's very cute. It's a little boy that's got a tiny, tiny Venus flytrap plant, which he grows into this gigantic monster. Well done, John Lewis. Well, I'm going to give it to Ben Stokes. So great nomination, John. And how about your Union jackass, Suzanne?
So a few weeks ago, I was on this programme and my Great Britain was Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Commissioner. But I'm afraid tonight he's my Union jackass because, as Suella Braverman says, he's playing favourites when he comes to protesters, and that's not what the police should be doing.
OK. John, your jackass of the day. Who's grinding your gears?
Well, it's an honorary one because she's not British, but Ivanka Trump. In the court, constantly being asked about all the manoeuvres of her father and what were the financial deals that he was involved with and overstating their assets. And she kept on and on saying, I can't recall, I can't recall. Now, I can recall her saying how well she knew the Trump organization. So there's hypocrisy for you. So that she down on her, I'm afraid. OK, fair enough. And your jackass of the day, Amy?
Well, Suzanne's not going to be very happy because I've gone for Sue Ellen herself.
How could you?
I think she's been incredibly irresponsible with her behaviour of this week. And I think if something goes wrong at that protest tomorrow, I will hold her responsible.
OK, well, listen, I'm going to give it to Sir Mark Rowley. Congratulations, Suzanne, on your nomination. Can I thank my brilliant panel tonight? Really enjoyed your company. Also, I'm in the middle of a 10-day run of shows, so thank you for your company on TV and on the radio. I'm back tomorrow at 9 for Mark Dolan tonight. But most importantly, well done to our amazing team who worked so hard. See you tomorrow at 9. Headliners is next.
Good evening. A bit of a chilly start tomorrow, but for most it'll be a fine bright day with sunny spells. Some heavy showers, particularly in the south early on. We've still got low pressure dominating the scene, so it is still spinning up plenty of showers, and particularly tonight as the isobars squeeze together across South Wales and southwest England. It's going to get very windy, so further heavy showers to come in here. The showers elsewhere tending to ease off. Some lively ones around right now, but turning fairly dry through the night for much of the Midlands, eastern England, northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Where we've got the clear skies and light winds, there will be a frost across parts of Scotland further south, mostly holding up at 5 or 6. But quite a wet start to the morning for South Wales and southwest England. Some heavy showers moving through here. They will move through and then get into the southeast for a time before tending to disappear before lunchtime. Showers through the day across northern Scotland and some for Northern Ireland, and later on we'll see a few developing over northwest England and North Wales. But for a good chunk of the country, it's a dry and bright day tomorrow. Good spells of sunshine. On the cool side, temperatures mostly in single figures, maybe 11 or 12 in the south. Certainly a cold start to the weekend, a more extensive frost across northern Britain and a few fog patches as well. But once they've gone, most of us having a fine day on Saturday. Still a few showers in northern Scotland with a bit of a breeze and some rain down to the southwest late on. That'll spread in during Sunday, and again on Sunday some frost and fog early on.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?